I was married and I had 3 children at the time. The youngest was only 6 months. She was my father's pride and joy. He'd carry her up and down the town every day, straight to the chemist, buy her a bib. Next day he could be up to the chemist again, buy her a rattler. That was just his way, he doted on her.
On the 16th of August 1981, Charlie set out to give a family friend a lift to Mass.
It's just a beautiful sunny morning, no different than any other Sunday. And I got a phone call at 1 o'clock from the lady he was supposed to pick up to say that he hadn't arrived.
While Charlie steered clear of politics and the IRA, his family first thought he might have been picked up at random for questioning by the security forces.
He started laughing. I says, I bet they've lifted him now, that'll shut him up. And they rang the barracks. No, they hadn't gone either. They'd lifted no one that day. So then we started worried we knew there was something wrong. And at the time there was a lot of cars being hijacked for one reason or another. And they used to hold the people for a few days in a shed or somewhere until they'd finished using the car, and then would release them. So we started to pray that that's what would happen and that a few days he'd be out. But it didn't work out that way.
Charlie's car was seen by a number of people the day he disappeared. Masked men were also reported in a laneway he had to drive along. The next day, his car was found abandoned in Dundalk.
The only theory we ever had was his car. That someone had wanted the car, and he was always adamant because it was his pride and joy, they would take him before they took the car.
In the years after, both the Armstrong and the Evans families were desperate to know what had happened to their loved ones. But in South Armagh, the road has long been one of absolute silence.
It was never talked about, never discussed. You could talk about inside your own 4 walls, but that'd be it. It was never mentioned outside.
We were in limbo, there was nothing we could do, you know, and then as the times that were in it, it was just silence, you know, and people didn't talk about things, regardless what they were.
For the Evans family, the first break in 29 years of silence came just after St Patrick's Day last year.
The first information that we'd ever received came on the 18th of March 2008, and that was an A4 card that was dropped in through my aunt's door with just a hand-drawn map on it and a message on it just saying, I believe this is where Jerry's body is. I hope this brings some sort of comfort and God bless you. It's just like he died that day. It was always that shocking.
The family dropped everything and followed the map to this site, close to where Jerry went missing.
This was where it was marked out on the map to come. This was the directions we were given, and we came down on that day within the space of an hour to come down to look at the site. It was a strange feeling, and in some sense there was a sense of peace as well, that maybe we were eventually going to give him his last rites, which was going to be a Christian burial. And if that's what we came down here for, was to initially look at the site, and also, as we said, to let him know that we were here.
After 30 years of waiting, it seemed like this was the first solid lead. The next step was to turn the site over to the Commission's specialist search team. Claire Graham is a geophysicist working on the Castle Blaney search. Their initial challenge was to see if the area actually showed signs of a hidden grave. In order to look for obvious changes over time, they compared aerial photographs and old maps.
This is the mapping from Castle Blaney. Here we have the AutoCAD mapping, the modern AutoCAD mapping, overlaid onto an aerial photograph from 1982, which wasn't long after disappearance, and it clearly shows clearings in the trees, one of which corresponds exactly with the line of the present path that goes through the site. It's unlikely that a burial is going to be so close to the path that was in use at the time, probably in use at the time.
If the grave wasn't on or close to the path, where was it?
We actually worked in this area in 10-metre grids, purely because it was more manageable with the amount of trees there were on the site.
The key was to find out what lay below the ground, because after 30 years, the most important signs would be invisible on the surface. They ran 3 electronic survey techniques over the site: ground-penetrating radar, magnetic signals, and electric pulses that register moisture can all show up disturbed soil. A dog trained to sniff for human remains also identified suspicious spots. These results were compiled on computer.
You think everything's going to be done in a split second, but as we found out, it doesn't actually happen like that. It takes a lot of time to go through the process of actually all the different techniques that have to be used.
Over time, the results of all the searches were plotted onto maps. The team could then focus on areas they could dig up. But the eventual result was heartbreaking for Jerry Evans' family. What was the eventual conclusion?
Well, a number of targets were identified, they were investigated, they were excavated, and nothing was found as a result of this.
For the Evans family, it was a crushing blow.
Because it's our first time, there is that sinking feeling, that feeling of again, distress, despair, because you're thinking, where do we go from here? Are we going to get any more information?
But just 4 days later, there was a second, more startling breakthrough. Journalist Suzanne Breen says she was called to a clandestine meeting with a member of the IRA's South Armagh Brigade. In a surprise move, he handed her a map and directions to a site where he claimed Jerry Evans was buried. Although he appeared to be acting on his own, this was dramatic evidence of changing attitudes in South Armagh. So what do you think was his motivation for coming forward?
He justified Jared Evans's abduction, execution as he called it, and secret burial. He said that he had no regrets about that or his role in it, but he thought that now it was the time for the truth. And he said he was absolutely amazed when Jared Evans and Charlie Armstrong's names were left off the official list, which was released by the Republican movement of people that they were admitting abducting and killing, and he didn't see why this should happen. He thought it was wrong, and he said it was time to put the Evans family out of their misery.
The family of Danny McMullin, whose body was found in the County Wicklow Hills last autumn, knows the value of first-hand information from IRA sources.
This morning, Danny McMullin's remains were carried out of the house where he grew up. Hundreds gathered at the family home in Burnett Drive to walk to Requiem Mass. Mr McMullin's parents, Dan and Lily, didn't live to see his body recovered.
The Wicklow site had in fact been searched before by Gardaí, but the key difference for the Nut4 search team was the additional information it got working face-to-face, on-site, with an IRA-approved source. This is the most secretive part of the Commission's work, and because it's so crucial, the British and Irish governments have granted immunity from prosecution for anyone passing on information. Could you explain to me how it works with the primary sources, those people with the knowledge of the burials?
Their identities are not passed on to anybody else, they're not recorded. It is done, it is managed through a very small team of people who obviously are in constant touch with the individuals concerned and with the organisations concerned. And it's worked very, very effectively so far. What we have received is a small amount of information that has proved to be of enormous value, and we're delighted with the way that has worked out. And of course we have a good deal of support from the Republican movement as well.
But while the main body of the IRA leadership has provided sources to the Commission, there's clearly been resistance from the leadership in South Armagh.
It's the local IRA, it's the South Armagh IRA who have given the denials to their own leadership. So their own leadership then, they can put their hand on their heart and say, listen, what we know is that it wasn't the IRA because South Armagh told them that. So it is South Armagh that is still clinging to the story they told first. They denied it, and they'll stick with that.
Would it be in your view that the leadership in South Armagh knows who did it and how it was done?
Oh, I would have no doubt about that whatsoever, that they know who did it and how it was done. You're into between a dozen and 2 dozen maybe people who must have fair knowledge of what